that poll, Vinny. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, do your thing.
What late night show do you watch? 1,800 voters.
Good for you guys.
96% said none.
Yeah.
2% Fallon. 1% Kimmel. 1% Colbert. Oh my God.
I'm so proud of every single one of you. Good for you. Don't give them any energy because it's not comedy. It's propaganda. They're all getting paid to do what they're doing. They're not about making people laugh anymore. It's just an agenda. I'm sick and tired of it. Let's just talk about these people. Jimmy Kimmel, who is one of the most unfunniest people on the planet. He's labeled as a stand-up comedian. Who's ever watched Jimmy Kimmel? Have any of you guys seen his special? Anybody?
What if I told you Jimmy Kimmel isn't doing comedy anymore? He's doing influence. And the punchline is you. Stay with me, because once you see what's really happening behind those late-night laughs, you won't be able to unsee it. Imagine this: Megyn Kelly and Patrick Bet-David teaming up like intellectual prize fighters. Gloves off and ready to knock out anything remotely phony. Their synergy wasn't subtle, it was seismic, and caught in the blast radius. Jimmy Kimmel, looking less like a comedic titan and more like a bewildered spectator at his own takedown, but this wasn't your typical sparring match. No playful jabs or half-hearted burns. It felt more like a reality-driven demolition crew storming a late-night set. Kimmel wasn't trading blows, he was absorbing them, and to call it a debate would be generous. It played out more like a heist collision between sharp insight and scripted satire, with facts doing the heavy damage.
They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it, because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee, and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but...
So, if you're curious how Jimmy Kimmel bounced back from that on-air collision, spoiler alert, he didn't. This wasn't your average sanitized talk show segment. It hit like a verbal blitzkrieg, fierce, fast, and too raw for commercial breaks. The one-liners were merciless, the truths unfiltered, and the takedowns unapologetically surgical. Here's the Thinkamills made a name for himself, swinging wildly at political targets like he's in a carnival booth, calling it satire while rarely landing a meaningful punch. Strip away the grin, and what's left is a predictable formula: weak setups, worn-out jokes, and a smug delivery that feels more like a smirk in search of a laugh track. His punchlines land with all the force of a damp paper towel in a bra, and forgettable. In depth. Forget it. His comedy doesn't dive. It barely wades. You'd need to strap it to a submarine and feed it GPS coordinates just to get it close to a real issue. Enter Megyn Kelly, the razor-sharp, former news anchor, who approaches media fluff with all the delicacy of a machete through butter. She's not here to play nice, and she certainly isn't sipping the same Hollywood Kool-Aid. When she looks at Kimmel's act, she doesn't see clever commentary, she sees fast food comedy, cheap, greasy, and vanishing before it ever hits the palate. His jokes don't echo, they evaporate. Her opening critique, spot and routine, turns serious topics into shallow party tricks. The kind of comedy that makes audiences politely chuckle while sneakily checking their phones. There's no substance behind the smirk, just hollow noise dressed as wit. Then came Kimmel's own words: I think if you're a reasonable person, you should have Trump derangement syndrome. This is a stupid person. And just like that, he nuked whatever credibility was left on that stage. The irony. A man who once ruled late night with mass appeal now stands on a shrinking stage, tossing out partisan jabs instead of crafting meaningful commentary. What once drew millions now feels like a rerun no one asked for. With a platform that big, you'd expect risk-taking, a little courage, maybe even a moment of truth. But Kimmel doesn't challenge the norm, he reinforces it. His jokes feel borrowed, from bar bathroom graffiti or yelled across Thanksgiving dinner by your least self-aware relative. Worn out, watered down, and well past their expiration date. And Megyn's not blind to the hypocrisy. Kimmel's comedic bravery stops just short of upsetting the Hollywood elite. He picks his targets like a kid avoiding the tough ones in dodgeball, careful not to ruffle the feathers of anyone with influence. He's ruthless with the easy ones and eerily silent on those who actually matter. That's not courage. That's not courage. That's Curation. The mic is his. The cameras are on. The audience is ready, but when it's time to say something with weight, he disappears behind punchlines that barely leave a dent. And that right there is the real sting. The wasted potential. Megyn Kelly sees it plain as day. Kimmel could be a real disruptor, someone who challenges narratives, provokes real thought, and punches up instead of sideways. But instead, he plays it safe, doling out jokes that melt away like Halloween candy. Sweet, simple, instantly forgettable. You'd think a late-night veteran would aim higher, that he'd want to leave a mark. But week after week, it's just reruns in disguise, safe, smug, and hollow where it should be bold. Jimmy Kimmel's idea of pushing the envelope, dragging out the same worn-out one-liners about political figures like it's still the early Obama years. His jokes aren't edgy, they're elderly. They've been around so long, even they want to retire. Then walks in Patrick Bet-David, a different animal. No clown mask, no gimmicks, just unfiltered commentary, surgical logic, and absolutely no time for the fluff that clogs most of modern media. When Patrick looks at Kimmel, he doesn't see a funny man doing his bit. He sees a cultural gatekeeper squandering the mic hand, worst-twisting comedy into camouflage for groupthink. Patrick's main gripe. Kimmel's comedy isn't risky or revealing. It's carefully crafted to protect comfort zones and spoon-feed the same echo chamber narratives we've heard 1,000 times. Satire, at its best, should challenge norms and force reflection. But Kimmel's version is like painting over a crack in the wall with glitter and calling it thought-provoking, shiny, but hollow. And it doesn't stop there. Let's rewind to the Oscars, the so-called highlight reel, a room full of self-congratulatory elites applauding the same man who wore blackface multiple times. Kimmel, draped in applause and unearned forgiveness, cracked jokes under spotlights while the very crowd that once claimed moral outrage devoured every second. Some of them were the same voices that condemned others for far less. This isn't just about awkward comedy. It's about rewriting cultural rules depending on who's holding the mic. Patrick Bet-David calls it what it is. Not satire, but soft propaganda, disguised as late-night laughs. Kimmel's punchlines don't push boundaries, they reinforce them. They steer thought rather than spark it. His humor isn't entertainment, it's programming. Bias wrapped in a smile. And it's not just a missed opportunity, it's a strategic dodge. Kimmel could use his platform to say something meaningful, to shake people awake. Instead, he delivers sugar-coated slogans, mass-produced for clicks and ratings, anything that might rattle the cage. Censored by the ad department. This isn't stand-up comedy, it's stand-down comedy. Engineered for maximum reach, with minimal risk, his show has become a feedback loop. Amplify safe outrage, target the same low-hanging fruit, rinse, repeat, and then there's the real gut punch. Patrick and Megyn Kelly see through the glitz. Together, their observations form a damning diagnosis. Kimmel's late-night kingdom is built not on courage, but convenience. It's not satire with slits, a reality show in disguise. Loud, shiny, and allergic to real substance. Need proof? Just watch how Kimmel fumbled through Robert Downey Jr.'s big moment. While the actor reached a career peak, Kimmel couldn't resist the urge to hijack it with cheap digs and flat attempts at humor. Instead of honoring someone's hard-fought journey, he turned it into a punchline. Nobody laughed, at least of all Downey himself. That's not just bad timing, that's tone-deaf. That's proof of how far we've fallen from what satire was meant to be. Kimmel's comedy doesn't dive into complexity, it flattens it. Every real issue, immigration, climate, justice, gets sliced into tweet-sized quips that go viral but say nothing. It's like throwing joke-shaped paper planes at a burning building and wondering why nothing changes. The punchlines don't inform, they just reinforce whatever the audience already believes. No challenge, no growth. And here's the kicker. While Kimmel preaches rebellion, he's part of the same machinery he claims to mock. He pokes at the powerless while protecting the powerful. He never goes after the untouchables, the Alisters, the sponsors, the ideological monoliths. He goes for the easy targets, the approved enemies. His satire has guardrails. That's not rebellion. That's brand maintenance. Megyn Kelly called it straight. Kimmel doesn't roast power, he roasts the people, who won't clap back. He swings where it's safe. And what that creates is a laugh track built in a vacuum. Echo chambers dressed up as insight, a club where only certain views get to be funny and everyone else is the punchline. And this is where it gets real uncomfortable. Because comedy isn't just jokes, it's influence. The way Kimmel frames issues becomes how people see those issues. He isn't just making folks laugh, he's shaping how they think. And when the narrative is narrowed, when humor becomes a tool to herd opinion, we lose something important. The ability to question, to explore, to see the whole picture. Even worse, we start thinking there's nothing to question in the first place. Kimmel isn't just missing the mark, he's lowering the bar. His platform could be a space for nuance, challenge, and even uncomfortable truth. But night after night, it's used to push the same safe commentary to the same safe crowd. It's fast food for the mind. Quick to consume, instantly forgettable, and leaves you emptier than before. And here's the haunting part. While everyone's laughing, nobody notices how far we've drifted from what satire once was. Kimmel's stage might as well be a fog machine, lots of light, lots of noise, but you can't see what matters anymore. Jimmy Kimmel's monologues don't spark new thoughts. They pump up confirmation bias like a balloon at a partisan pep rally. Each punchline reinforces what the audience already believes, trapping them in a comfort zone so cozy. Even a whisper of a different view gets laughed off before it's heard. This isn't comedy that opens doors. It's comedy that builds walls, and quickly. You know the routine. Trump jab here, conservative dig there, rinse, repeat, predictable, painless, pre-approved. But here's the catch, these aren't just jokes, they're bricks. Bricks stacked between friends, families, and political camps that used to be able to disagree without drawing battle lines. Now it's all sarcasm and side eyes. Comedy has stopped being a bridge, it's become a barricade. And the hypocrisy. It's not subtle. Picture this. ABC broadcasts Sunday morning interviews with George Stephanopoulos and Sunday night Oscars with Jimmy Kimmel, the same Kimmel with a blackface past that somehow keeps getting swept under red carpets. Meanwhile, ABC fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for merely asking if we should judge a contestant by today's standards or those of the past. That question got him axed. Kimmel's long history of offensive sketches. Crickets. Why? Because he toes the ideological line. Because he says the right things about the right people. It's not about morality. It's about messaging. Now imagine if Kimmel used that massive platform to challenge the status quo rather than reinforce it. What if his stage wasn't a political funhouse mirror, but a space where tough conversations started with a laugh, not ended with one? That's the sharp edge Patrick Bet-David brings. He sees the missed opportunity. Kimmel could push people to think, not just chuckle. He could introduce a little discomfort, maybe even get people to laugh with those they disagree with, instead of laughing at them from across the divide. Instead, we get recycled bits and point-and-snicker theatrics. The kind of humor that soothes the crowd but never shakes it awake. It's not medicine. It's anesthesia. And in today's climate, that matters. Emotions are high. Dialogue is low. Humor should help us breathe, it shouldn't fan the flames, then walk away like it helped put the fire out. But Kimmel doesn't just avoid the fire, he tiptoes around it in designer shoes, cracking jokes so surface level they couldn't even wet the pavement in a summer rain. He doesn't challenge his viewers to think past the headlines. He keeps them at the headlines just far enough to feel informed, but not far enough to understand. And that's how polarization grows. When comedy becomes another tool to divide rather than connect, everyone starts shouting, no one listens, and the laughter starts sounding like static. The tragedy. Kimmel likely thinks he's doing good, serving up truth with a side of chuckles, informing and entertaining. But in reality, it's like trying to put out a wildfire with a can of lighter fluid labeled comedy. It looks helpful. It sounds clever. But underneath, the damage spreads. Late-night comedy in 2024 has become a broken jukebox of Trump jokes and partisan jabs. Viewership is tanking across the board. Colbert, Kimmel, and Myers keep circling the same talking points, like satellites, stuck in orbit. 98% of election-related jokes this year, aimed squarely at one man, Trump. The rest of the political spectrum. Crickets. That's not balance. That's branding.
This past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored at the Kennedy Center? You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat.
And this is precisely where Megyn Kelly and Patrick Bet-David find rare common ground and alignment, not born out of outrage, but out of clarity. Both recognize something many in media seem to forget. Comedy is never neutral. It's not just entertainment, it's a cultural force, wielded daily in monologues, memes, skits, and sound bites. It has the power to elevate or erode, to challenge authority or to cozy up to it, to wake people up or lull them into a sweet unbothered sleep. Comedy, at its best, isn't just about laughs, it's about truth delivered sideways. Ideas, sugar-coated, in humor so we swallow them whole. And that's why how it's used matters immensely. When late-night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel start playing it safe or worse, strategically playing to the crowd, they don't just soften the edges of comedy, they soften the impact. What should function as a cultural truth serum becomes a sedative. What should shake people awake instead soothes them into inertia. The audience laughs, yes, but do they reflect? Do they learn? Do they question? Often, no. They clap, they cheer, they repost, but nothing shifts inside. The world stays divided. And the public discourse stays shallow. And this isn't just about bad jokes or repetitive Trump jabs. It's about influence, real, measurable influence, because whether we like it or not, comedy today shapes public understanding. In a fragmented media landscape, where fewer people trust traditional journalism and more get their news from monologues and TikToks, the tone of comedy becomes the tone of culture. Late-night shows used to be the home of edgy, unexpected commentary. No one was safe from satire, and the host's job was to rattle both sides of the aisle with equal enthusiasm. Today, the humor is calculated. The targets are pre-approved. The punchlines are test-marketed. That's not satire, that's public relations. When comedians only punch in one direction, recycling safe jokes aimed at the usual suspects, they create echo chambers wrapped in laugh tracks. The same worldview, repeated nightly, becomes gospel to an audience that isn't asked to stretch, only to smile. And when audiences aren't challenged, they grow complacent. The walls go up. The tribalism sets in, and our collective ability to talk across the aisle withers. Kelly and Bet-David see that decay. They're not out here calling for censorship or cancellations. Their critique runs deeper. They're diagnosing a cultural illness, the loss of intellectual courage in mainstream comedy. Kelly, with her journalist's instinct for uncomfortable truth, cuts through the shiny veneer of late-night shows to expose how much they don't say. She notices the moments where real topics are reduced to punchlines, where the jokes skim over deep injustice, systemic failures, or real human suffering, and instead focus on easy outrage that earns quick claps but sparks no actual thought. Bet-David, for his part, breaks it down like a strategist. He sees the long-term cost of this comedic laziness. In his world entrepreneurship, critical thinking, the free exchange of ideas, being challenged is not optional, it's vital. So when he watches someone like Kimmel use a global platform to push partisan jabs while dodging harder truths, it's not just disappointing, it's dangerous, because it sets the tone for everyone else. Together, Kelly and Bet-David offer something rare in today's fragmented media environment: a call for comedic accountability, not censorship. They want more from the people with the microphones. They believe that those who command millions of eyeballs every night owe the public more than recycled punchlines and politically safe snark. They're asking comedians, especially those in positions of influence, to remember what comedy can do. When it's brave, when it's balanced, when it's willing to get uncomfortable. They understand that in today's world, where a single tweet can shape headlines and a late-night clip can go more viral than a press conference, every joke matters. Comedy has become a primary delivery method for politics, for social commentary, and for public values. And when that comedy is shallow, skewed, or sanitized, it doesn't just make bad TV, it steers the culture in the wrong direction, in a society already torn by partisanship. Kimmel's style of satire doesn't cool the temperature, it raises it. His monologues may be funny to his base, but they do little to invite understanding or introspection. Instead, they solidify ideological positions. They weaponize humor to draw lines, not to cross them. And that's the opposite of what the greatest comedians in history have done. The best satire, from George Carlin to Richard Pryor to Jon Stewart in his prime, punched at power, at corruption, at societal absurdities, no matter which side they came from. They made you laugh and think. They made everyone a little uncomfortable, especially the comfortable. And that's the point. True comedy risks offense because it aims for truth. It embraces nuance. It doesn't follow the crowd it critiques. Today, we don't see enough of that. We see comedians playing to their audience, not pushing them. We see producers sanitizing scripts for sponsors. We see fear of being canceled, of losing ratings, of making the wrong joke. And so, instead of humor that challenges, we get humor that flatters. We get cultural cheerleading dressed up as insight. That's the world Kelly and Bet David are warning us about. Not just a world of weak jokes, but of wasted platforms, where the people with the greatest reach are the ones saying the least. Where the people best positioned to stir the pot are instead stirring the Kool-Aid. It's not just disappointing, it's disorienting, because if even our comedians are afraid to say something real, who's left? Kelly and Bet David aren't throwing stones from the sidelines. They're holding up a mirror. They're asking the creators of culture to take a long, hard look at what their laughter is actually doing. Is it informing or distracting? Is it deepening thought or dulling it? Is it helping people see the full picture or just the parts that fit the script? And the answer, if we're honest, is uncomfortable. But maybe that's the point. Because comedy, when done right, should make us uncomfortable. It should shake us out of our assumptions. It should hold power to account all power, not just the opposing teams. So the next time a late-night host cracks another joke about Trump, or another celebrity gets roasted for low-hanging scenes, take a moment to ask, who's missing from the punchline? What stories aren't being told? What truths aren't being touched? Because, as Kelly and Bet David make clear, the problem isn't just that Jimmy Kimmel is predictably, it's that his brand of safe, surface-level satire reflects something much bigger. A media culture that's afraid to get real. And if we don't start asking for more depth, more honesty, more courage, the laugh track might drown out something far more important, the truth. Because comedy can be revolutionary. Not just in the way it makes us laugh, but in the way it makes us think, or at least, it should. The greatest comedians in history weren't just entertainers, they were truth-tellers in disguise. Using humor as a scalpel to cut through hypocrisy, challenge groupthink, and hold power accountable, comedy has the rare ability to say what others won't, to sneak uncomfortable truths past people's defenses, and to expose societal rot with a punchline. But none of that happens when it's reduced to a safe space for pre-approved opinions. None of that happens when every joke is an applause line designed to get nods from the already converted instead of challenging people to see the world differently. Real comedy disrupts. It rattles echo chambers. It throws uncomfortable questions into comfortable rooms. It doesn't just entertain, it agitates, in the best way possible. But to do that, it has to go beyond easy targets and predictable scripts. It has to risk something. Otherwise, it's just noise, clever, crowd-pleasing, but ultimately, hollow. And right now, much of what passes for political comedy on late-night TV feels less like satire and more like smug reinforcement of whatever the audience already believes. So the next time you catch a late-night monologue filled with political jokes about Trump, conservatives, or whatever villain of the week, pause for a second. Ask yourself, what is this really doing? Is it illuminating a truth, or just dunking on the usual suspects? Is it helping us understand the world better, or just giving us permission to laugh at them without ever questioning us? Is it informing or just reinforcing? Is it opening a door, slamming it shut? Because as Megyn Kelly and Patrick Bet David make crystal clear, comedy isn't just comedy. It's a cultural steering wheel, one that can guide us toward insight, connection, and truth, or one that spins us in circles of division, superiority, and shallow validation. And if we keep letting it turn in only one direction toward safety, tribalism, and easy claps, don't be surprised when we all end up lost, more polarized than ever, and less capable of having the conversations that actually matter. And maybe the real joke isn't on the host, it's on us, for laughing at the surface while the deeper issues slip by untouched, for mistaking comfort for clarity, for applauding lines that never cross any. Because if we don't start asking for more from the people with the biggest microphones, we're not just accepting mediocre comedy, we're co-signing cultural stagnation.